Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. This is Scott Stevenson, and again, welcome to the Re-Inspired podcast. Today's episode is fantastic. It's with a business leader who's also a dad, who is a published author, who's done years of research on success and wealth, a sales trainer, a motivational speaker. It's just a great episode with a really, really good human and an old friend of mine. I'm super excited you guys get to join us in this conversation. This is also one of the first episodes that we filmed too, so hopefully you can see kind of an evolution of where we're taking things. But please join me in spending some quality time with the one and only Brandon Pipkin. Stay tuned. This isn't just another story. This is your story, your triumphs, your conquest, your accomplishments, the things you've overcome. These are the things that make you you. But most importantly, these are the stories of what lies ahead. It's time to get re-inspired. Welcome to the Re-Inspired podcast. My name's Scott Stevenson. Appreciate you being here with us. We're super excited about today's interview. It's with the one and only Brandon Pipkin. Before we start this amazing interview, please do us a favor and click on that subscribe button below so we can continue delivering top-tier content straight to your inbox. So without further ado, let's hop to it. Brandon, so good to be with you today.
Thanks for having me.
Man, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with you, my friend.
You too.
So you and I go back a little ways. I know you as a sales professional. We'll get into that. A published author, a motivational speaker, all these other great things. Give me the 25,000 foot view of who Brandon Pipkin is.
The first thing that I would say is father of five, light and joy of my life, the 5 kids that I've got. And in addition to that, or maybe that's one and the same, my greatest joy is to help other people reach their potential, become all they can be, and share their unique gifts, talents, and abilities with the rest of the world.
Okay, that's amazing. Great elevator pitch. So let's start off with what helped you start on this journey of this passion you have for helping other people? Was it something that hit you at a young age? Was it all in one moment? Did it happen over time? What does that look like?
Yeah. Sometimes I think the genesis of that was my 2-year church mission. But as you asked that question, I remember being 14 and thinking, I can't wait to have an impact on other people. There was just something in me at that point in time that I wanted to help and inspire other people to help them be their very best. And then served a 2-year church mission where it was really all about serving other people and helping them become who they can be. Came back from that and shortly thereafter fell into a network marketing opportunity. And in fact, if you're not busy, Tuesday night at 7, you want to come over to the house?
Sure.
Yeah.
Send me an invite.
No longer involved in that, but caught fire with wanting to be the very best that I could be, because they have great leadership development and personal development associated with network marketing opportunities typically. And so I got really invested and engaged there, wanting to become the best that I could be and inspire others to be the best that they could be. Shortly thereafter, I worked for a leadership development company. I was around some really powerful people who saw the world and all the potential that there was in the people around them and wanted to bring that out. And I got really inspired to do that.
Do you think there was an element of being around some of those people that the byproduct of that caused you to think bigger?
Sure.
Yeah. What did that look like?
Yeah. Well, having worked around those people, when I was on my mission, I thought I would probably come back and be an actor.
Okay.
And I had toyed around with being a trainer or a teacher as well. I didn't want to go down the teacher road, though, because I wanted to have a family and I didn't think I could support a family on a teacher's salary. Unfortunately, the way we support teachers is not that great. And I decided that acting was probably not going to be for me. Number one, I don't have the face for it. I've got a face for radio, but I figured that out later. Before I figured that out, I realized that's probably not an industry that supports the types of morals and values that I hold to me, right?
Sure.
And I don't know for sure. This is an outsider's perspective. So that's just what I thought. So I now forgot your question. And I'm lost in my own thought there about Hollywood.
No, we were talking about if there was one particular moment
right.
where where the lights went off or it happened, or if it was over time.
And thinking bigger. Yeah. So definitely over time. So I was thinking about being that teacher. And so it was going to be inspiring students who were in front of me. Acting was, this is a lot of fun and I can inspire people through movies and things like that. After I gave up on those, I stayed in sales and sales management because I kind of fell into a sales role through driving a maintenance and janitorial supply truck that then put me into a sales role. And I stayed in sales because companies will keep you around if you can sell.
Yeah.
And I wanted to support my family, and there were a couple of economic downturns. And so it made a lot of sense. Along the way, I got around these amazing people, like the professional speakers and authors that I was around at the leadership development company. And I started to see a much bigger picture and some influence that I could have. And I had wanted to write a book, but I didn't just want to regurgitate what other people had said.
Sure.
I wanted to have done something or experienced or learned something significant that I could share with other people. And so definitely being around those other people expanded my view to what kind of an impact I might be able to have.
Okay. No, it's amazing. Let's go back to, where did you do your missionary trip?
So I have friends that went to the slums of Brazil.
Oh, wow.
One that went to East LA, and I went to Switzerland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But how was that?
Oh, geez. Right. But people ask all the time, is it as beautiful as the postcards? No, you can't capture on a postcard what that place looks like.
Oh, it's amazing.
You can't take in the feeling that's there.
Okay.
Well. Europe is magical, and Switzerland especially.
Okay. Oh, I love that.
So it was unreal. And ways that I grew and developed were unbelievable.
Okay. So you come back from your trip, and you and I had talked kind of off camera a little bit about that first job you got once you got back. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I needed a job when I first came back. My buddy was leaving on his mission. He said, why don't you take my job? So sure. So it was driving a maintenance and janitorial supply truck.
Okay.
A Chevy, whatever it was, half-ton pickup or whatever,
Okay.
loaded with floor wax or ice melt pellets or whatever.
Yeah.
This particular organizations might need. And so as I drove that truck for about a month, the owner of the company came to me and she said, yeah, you're wasting my time driving this truck. So I thought I was on my way out the door. She was firing me. And instead, what she said, though, was your skill set is better suited for sales. I didn't even know what sales was. I had to ask her a few questions. What do you mean? How does this work? Oh, you just go talk to people and you take their order. Well, I take their order for what? What am I doing? Just the stuff you deliver. I was clueless. So she gave me my start in sales. And this is one thing I learned interviewing successful people. They often fall into the paths that they take.
Okay. It's
not this pre-programmed path, especially in sales. Very few people at 18 say, I'm going to be a professional salesperson.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's hone in on that word salesperson real quick. Right.
Right.
I think the modern connotation of salesperson isn't necessarily a positive one. Right. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
What have you seen being a professional sales trainer?
Yeah.
Right. What do you think differentiates a sales professional from a salesman or salesperson, or is there a difference?
Yeah. So this bad rap that salespeople get is well-deserved.
Okay.
I was with an organization several years ago, and they do loans for personal types of things, like if somebody wants to fix up the house or pay for their daughter's wedding or something like that. And this particular person said, oh yeah, if I'm talking to somebody who's divorced, I say, yeah, I'm divorced too. I understand. I get you. I see where you're coming from. And I followed up with that person and I said, so it sounds like you went through a divorce. Oh, what made you say that? And I said, well, last time I was here, you said that if somebody mentions they've been through a divorce, you mention that you have too. She goes, oh no, I just say that to them so that they think and feel that I can commiserate with them and they feel more connected to me. Right. So this is the kind of stuff that still exists and that salespeople still do. They will do what it takes to get the sale. This is one of the reasons I actually like working in the sales industry, even though for years I would eschew, kind of push it away at arm's length because I know what people think. But now I'm proud to step in and say, yes, I am a sales trainer and I am helping other people do it the right way. Again, it's a deservedly so rap that salespeople get. You look at studies, one in particular says that only 3% of people trust sales professionals.
Wow.
Lawyers, they come in at 12%. So 4 times more trusted than a salesperson is a lawyer, who also gets terrible rap, but the salespeople are even less trusted. Why? Because most of the time sales is about, how can I get you to do what I want to do?
Okay.
How can I get you to pay me money so I can pad my commission check, so I can hit my quota or whatever?
So would you say that's the differentiator from a salesperson to a sales professional, or do you just think there's simply different techniques or different motivations behind what people are doing?
It's motivation. Yeah, it's where your head is. Technique. Listen, I've trained sales techniques, sales skills for 15 years now, and they're great. They're wonderful. They're awesome. The technique and the skill means nothing if you don't have the motivation behind it.
Okay.
The right motivation behind it. And that's why one of my partners, I just absolutely love partnering with Trusted Advisor Associates. Their whole mindset is, let's do what's right for the customer.
Okay.
That's our goal. If what's right for the customer is to sell them what we've got, great, we'll do that. If what's right for the customer is to refer them to a competitor, that's what we're going to do. So the key differentiator between, say, either a salesperson and sales professionals, the key differentiator is really, where's your motivation?
Okay. And it's a motivation of what's in it for them,
yeah,
versus what's in it for you.
Yep.
I love that. I think that oftentimes when we're looking at different motivations, people talk about something called commission breath, right?
Yeah,
and like you were saying, padding the commission check, or they're thinking about, a house payment or whatever that looks like for the person. I think there's a 5-degree shift in the lens you choose to look through, right? And I think we could probably agree that if you wake up every morning and your plan is to go chase $1,
yep,
you're never going to catch it, or you're going to be running a marathon every single day.
Or you catch it and it's hollow, and
right. Whereas if you wake up every morning and you decide, all right, I'm going to serve people, or I'm going to go out and help people, or I'm going to empower people, or whatever that looks like for you, whatever your product or service is, that's a different existence. And I know that there's an element of sleeping a lot better.
Yeah.
Right. With that kind of lens to look through.
Exactly.
Have you seen a lot of that?
Yeah.
Or experienced it firsthand?
Oh, yeah. Right. So this person that I was talking about, who just says what they need to say, she, I think, was doing just fine financially. She was hitting her numbers that the organization expected her to. But how do you think ultimately, when she looks at, how did I make this money? She's got to reckon with that.
Yeah.
And that's just not something that I ever felt good about. Well, I shouldn't say something I never felt good about. So when I was first in sales, I thought that sales was, let me polish my apple and make it look really good while I let the competitor's apple rot in the corner. And after a little while, I realized I don't feel good about that.
Yeah.
I want to look you in the eyes 6 months from now and know I did right by you. And so I just started selling to people like I would sell to my grandmother.
Okay.
Right. So that 5-degree shift in the lens allows me now to look at somebody 6 months, 6 years from now and know I didn't take advantage of you.
Right.
I didn't try to pull one over on you. I didn't say what I needed to say so that I could make that commission check.
Yeah.
So I have total confidence. And if you look at, so Trusted Advisor Associates, one of the things we talk about is, think about clients who fully trust you.
Okay.
Let's look at it let's look at the real estate world. If a client fully trusts you, they're not going to be out interviewing other agents. They're going to be looking at your expertise. They're going to stick with you. They're going to take your advice a lot sooner, so you don't have to go back and forth with things. They're going to defer to you on certain things, which can be helpful, right? It speeds up the process because they're not going to nitpick everything. They trust that you're doing right by them, so they don't need to read every jot and tittle in the contract. And then you're more likely to get repeat and referral customers because
it's fair.
Their name is safe with you.
Yeah.
A lot of times people won't refer because their name isn't going to be safe referring to you.
Sure.
So you've got these people. For instance, there was a realtor that mined my neighborhood years ago, and they sent out a magnet that said, I love referrals. Well, cool, dude. I love puppies. Do you want to get together and talk about what we love? That was so self-serving. I didn't know this person, but he's like, send me referrals. The hell I will. I don't know you. I don't trust what's going to happen with that. But when there's trust there, because somebody has made that shift that you mentioned, the lens shift, it speeds everything up. The results are better. Long-term repeat referral business. The person can sleep at night. Oh, by the way, we're just two humans interacting.
Right. Well, that's what I was thinking as you were describing that. The first scenario sounds like a transaction. The second scenario sounds like a relationship.
That's exactly it.
Big, scary word, relationship.
It
Actually,
is. Yeah.
being real and being present with people.
Right. Relationships are scary. So you and I talked a little while ago about one of the reasons why relationships are scary. It's because we have to be vulnerable. And that's one of the key differences between salespeople and true trusted advisor sales professionals. The trusted advisor is willing to be vulnerable and to say something like, hey, I got to tell you, I messed up on this. At the risk of looking dumb here and like I don't know what I'm doing, I totally blew this. I sent you that proposal and I missed a key point here. I need to circle back and do that. And a lot of salespeople won't do that because, oh, I'll look dumb, I'll look stupid, I won't look professional. The trusted advisor knows the relationship is more important and I need to be real here.
Well, and quite honestly, if we found ourselves in that situation, that would almost endear us together to go, okay, that was an act of trust or kindness, however you'd want to describe it. That's amazing. So let's go back. You come off your 2-year trip to Switzerland.
Yep.
Right. You're driving a truck.
Yep.
That leads into different sales opportunities.
Yep.
How did you get to the point where you're like, you know what? I'm gonna write a book.
Yeah. I'd love to really know, but because it's such an endeavor to write a book. Like when people say, I'm thinking about writing a book, I say, don't think about writing a book. If you're compelled to write a book, okay, go write a book. But if you're just thinking about writing a book, don't do it. There's so much work, energy, and effort into it. Once I finished the book, I thought, oh, this is great. I've made it. All the hard part is, no, then you got to market this dang thing and, make something out of it. So I think for me, it was a combination of things. I wanted to help and inspire people. I just didn't know how.
Okay.
I wanted to write a book after a certain time, probably being around those authors and motivational speakers at the leadership development company, but I wanted to have done something significant. And then I came across this thought by a guy named Robert Allen, I think is his name. He's a real estate trainer from the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
His thought is every one of us has a unique gift to give to the world. And if we don't give that gift to the world, then the symphony of life is deficit of that beautiful note. And if little by little people don't play their unique notes, the symphony is no longer a symphony.
Okay.
It's a horn blaring over there and a stringed instrument stringing over there and the drum crashing every now and again. But with everybody giving their unique gifts to the symphony, it becomes this beautiful, incomparable experience. So when I read that thought, something happened within me and I thought, wow, he's talking about this unique gift and he tied it to passion. And it struck me. I want to find out how successful people found their passion, parlayed it into their success, and then write a book on that so it can become the blueprint of how other people can do this.
Okay. All right. So are you insinuating that passion is the foundation for success or a part of success, or I could have passion for my extracurricular activities and I need to fund those?
Yep.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about passion.
There were two very funny experiences when it came to passion. On the third interview, I asked Matt Given, this guy who'd been a client of mine at CompUSA, and become a friend of mine. I asked Matt, hey, what's your passion during the interview? And he said, I don't know. I've never had that conversation with myself. Earlier in the interview, I asked him about goals. And I said, well, surely you had a business plan when you started. First, I asked him about goals and he was like, no, I've never had that number on the wall. Like I've made it if I make this. I said, well, surely you had a business plan when you started this fourth business. He said, it was more of a sketch on a whiteboard.
Okay.
So those three answers, thinking over them, I realized the things we're told create success may not really be what creates success. Matt didn't know what his passion was. Matt didn't have written down goals. He didn't have a business plan. So it's not like he had this path and he had discipline and he had passion and all this. Matt obviously didn't know that the subtitle of the book was going to be Find Your Passion, Find Your Success. Right. He totally blew that out of the water with his answer, right? So from that interview on, I just went on a fact-finding mission. And in fact, when I went back and looked at interview 1 and 2, it wasn't that these people had this passion and followed it. It was that they fell into what they were doing because of other circumstances. And then they just worked hard and it became their passion. One of the later people I interviewed is a guy by the name of Larry Winget. He ultimately decided he didn't want to be part of the book.
Larry Winget from It's Called Work for a Reason, the author.
He's an author. He's been on CNBC.
He's
right?
amazing. I know.
He
I know
calls himself the world's only irritational speaker.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I know him.
Hopefully, Larry, don't kill me that I brought up your name in connection with this. So Larry and I were talking, and he's like, passion's a load of crap. He said, people will come up to me after I do a speech, and they'll say, oh, I love seeing your passion up there. And he's like, my passion? Are you kidding me? My passion is sitting on my back porch with my dog at my side, drinking a drink, watching the sun go down. What you just saw up there, that was work. So he talks about how passion's a load of crap, and we got to stop telling people to find their passion, because it leads people to doing things that aren't going to get them paid.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, the link between passion and success wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
So back in my my consulting days, it was interesting. So if I could come across a craftsman, right, a contractor that was a true craftsman, everything was just perfection, right?
Yeah.
Everything was the David.
Yeah.
And they were awful business owners. And then I would also come across contractors that they were efficient, we'll say. They were speedy and efficient, but they were fantastic business people.
Yep.
And so to watch the craftsmen kind of stay at the level they were at, and watch these other guys that maybe didn't have the skill or discipline, but their calling was on the building a business side versus the perfect carpentry or whatever the discipline may have been. And that was interesting to see, because I think a lot of times, especially if people are falling into things, they may not be in love with what they're doing, but they may be in love with the journey. They may be in love with the end result. They may be in love with what that thing they fell into funds for them outside of business.
Yep.
And I think that's just something neat to see with different people, right?
Millionaire 18, Sean Kane said, I fell into the profession that I'm in and it became my passion. Judith Briggs, who is a 1-800-GOT-JUNK franchisee, said, I just wanted a business where I could work with my children, and this offered me that opportunity. She has a finance background.
Okay.
Like, junk is not her passion.
Right.
Cleaning up junk, going to people's houses, digging through the Black Widow infested junk pile is not necessarily her passion. But what was her passion? Being with her kids and building a business and being able to do that together.
That's fantastic. Along your journey, so we talked about it kind of happened for you over time. I want to talk about the drive you have for empowering people and bringing the best out of them. Where do you think that came from for you?
Yeah, maybe from being a people pleaser.
Okay.
When I was growing up, feeling like my worth and value was tied to what I helped other people accomplish or what I gave to them.
Okay.
In the intervening years since then, and having had great counselors who have helped me understand my own motivations and why I'm doing things, now what it comes down to is I genuinely love and care for people. I have an intense compassion for them, for their situation, a natural empathy, and a natural desire to help other people connect to everything that's great within them, their natural gifts, talents, and abilities, so that they can become everything that they can be. And part of that is probably flavored by my religious faith, which is that we are eternal beings. And this is an opportunity, this life is an opportunity to become as much as we can become, to grow as much as we can become. And I think it's a combination of nature and nurture. There's a natural passion in me, and then through nurture, seeing other people try to bring out the things in me. I grew up without a dad in the home, and it was those older men at church who took an interest in me and treated me like I could be something that made a huge difference in my life. I was a lost ball in tall weeds. I was an annoying teenager making bad decisions, and they treated me like I was just a normal person who had some good potential. Had they not done that, the story may be much different. So I think it's that natural passion combined with the things that I saw from other people. I just can't help it. I want other people to be the best they can be. And I know the world will be a better place when we're all as good as we can be.
Do you think there's a hardwired sense inside of you of maybe you're trying to pay those acts of kindness back? Or do you think someone showing you that kindness kind of changed your being?
Yes, to both of those.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit more about that.
So we grew up poor, single mom, 4 kids. Somebody knocked on the door 23rd of December one year with this big box and said, hey, Santa's delayed in Kansas and wanted me to give you this. That makes an impact. When you have that kind of kindness extended to you, you can't help but want other people to experience that, especially because you know what that feels like. The other part of that is, and again, I got lost in my story there. What was the question? We'll cut this part out too.
No. Okay. The question was, do you feel like you have an obligation to pay some of that back, or do you think those acts of kindness actually change the DNA of who you are?
Yep. Yeah. So I think it's both, right? So that act of kindness, receiving that box on Christmas, you definitely want to pay that back and help other people experience that. And it feels like an obligation to do it for whatever reason for me. And then, yeah, that changes the DNA within you going forward too, because you see what can be done when somebody takes action.
Okay. So one of the things that we had talked about, and it was great advice to anybody in any field, really. And, oftentimes I think as entrepreneurs or professionals, we spend all of our time getting ready to get ready.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And one thing you said to Cato and I is get in there and make a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about making messes.
One of the key things I've learned interviewing successful people, millionaires, Olympians, entrepreneurs, sales professionals, leaders, politicians. One of the keys to success in life is getting in there and doing the work, making a mess. We talk about work harder, not smarter. The most successful people I know don't work smarter. They work. They're not concerned with the mental energy of how can I optimize this system and how can I shortcut this. They just show up. They put their nose to the grindstone and they figure stuff out. Do they talk to people? Yes. And they get help and they find shortcuts by talking to people, but they're not ideating on how to find these shortcuts. They're putting in the work to find the most effective and efficient things. They are failing and learning from those failures. One of the key lessons I learned from successful people is they don't ever consider failure. For them, it's something that didn't work. And so they just change course.
Yeah.
Do something else.
It's called failing forward, right?
Failing forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the key things I wanted to know as I interviewed these people as well was, how do you know when you should press forward when you're getting resistance? How do you know when you should change approach? The answer was universal. You don't. So what do? You just keep working hard. And at some point you figure out, okay, I've learned some lessons here, but yeah, I need to change course and go over here. There's no magic bullet. But as you work hard and make a mess of things, beautiful things happen. Opportunities open up. I'm seeing that right now. I left an organization I was with for 10 years and just started making a freaking mess of what I'm doing. And I had a little bit of an shnikes moment when I left them earlier this year, because I had to now implement the things I've been talking about for 10 years, but not doing. I was teaching other people how to do it, but wasn't actively doing it for 10 years. So it was this moment like, oh boy, can I do this? And there was fear. There was imposter syndrome of, can I do this? Am I this good? Am I going? And I just realized, just get in there and make a mess. And so for the last several months, I've been making a mess. And in the last 2 months, some amazing things have just popped.
Okay.
In business. Yeah. Some really cool opportunities just coming out of the woodwork.
Well, I think part of that making a mess is there's a decision at some point in time where you take a deep breath and you jump in, right? Yeah. Or you get in the game. And I think opportunity more likely is found in the actual game than on the sidelines getting ready.
That's
right?
Yep.
And so let's talk about getting in the game. What caused you to go from driving a truck, becoming a sales professional, getting really, really good at sales, right? And then changing direction a little bit and being, all right, now I'm going to teach this. Now I'm going to teach this because it's going to help fill me up so I can fill other people up and empower them. What did that look like for you?
It looked like 22 full-time jobs throughout the process, very circuitous.
Okay.
So what I tell people is, look, I've had 22 full-time jobs. I've got broad experience, or I can't keep a job. It's one of those two. In the course of those 22 jobs, one of the things that I figured out at CompUSA was where you and I know each other. The illustrious meeting point for us.
Hey, I needed a printer, man.
I'll sell you two.
Yes.
So one of the key things I found there was that was such a poorly run organization. Not our manager at that store. The store manager was unbelievable, but the organization in general, and I had just come from a leadership development company. I knew what companies should look like and how they should run. And I pushed back on CompUSA and I got smacked down. Like, no, we're going to run it this way. And I knew it was wrong. And we would do stuff that I didn't feel good about on the sales side.
Okay.
Back to that, why they don't trust salespeople. Like, just discount the product by the amount of the warranty, throw the warranty in, don't really tell them that it's there. Just shady stuff that did not feel good, right? So everything about that job did not feel good except training my team.
Okay.
And training was something that one of the regional managers has said, you've got to do this. And I was like, I don't have time to do this. I don't want to do this. So I drug my feet doing it and found out how much I freaking loved it.
Okay. So it was a job like that, not this public speaking, working with authors and motivational speakers. It was an act in a big box retailer where you got to kind of self-discover what some of your natural talents and abilities were that I guess kind of lit a long fuse.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
But didn't think I could financially do it. And then I learned, I get to train my team in this context, and they were eating it up. And I was like, I don't think this stuff's that good, guys, but they were really excited about it. And they were young and in their career, a lot of them. And I realized the impact that it could make. And I had just been at that leadership development company where I was around authors and speakers. So that, back to your question of, did that widen my view? Yeah, that widened my view. And now I understood, okay, I can develop people and help guide and coach them here. And so I actually prayed, being of faith. And I said, Heavenly Father, this job is killing me. I hate everything about this job except training my team. What do I need to do? And the answer was going to training. So I thought, the answer is going to open up. You're going to make this so easy on me. No. It was several months later, I got fired from CompUSA because I was very mediocre because I wasn't invested. Right. All the things that I just told you. So I got fired and I thought, you freed me up. This is great. You're going to open up the next opportunity. No, I had to work at a car dealership for a little bit of time. And there were some unpleasant things about that. Then I had to go sell software for very little money, trying to support 4 kids. And at the time, 4 kids. And then I got picked up by a global training organization and then was able to stay in training.
Okay. So we had talked about how an act of kindness helped shape your DNA a little bit when you were young. Along that path up to the point we're at right now, were there any other acts of kindness or people that maybe inspired you or saw something in you that you didn't know was inside of you?
You want to keep this podcast to less than 3 hours, right? Yeah, I could go on with tons of people. Steve Rockwood, who after my mission kept tabs on me and put me into a role at his organization and showed me lots of trust and love. And I probably made him look bad in so many ways because I made so many mistakes and was so pompous at the time. I've had really good therapists and counselors along the way who have been amazing. People at church, like my buddy Clay, who saw that I wasn't myself and invited me to go to lunch, listen to me whine for an hour and gave me some amazing advice that changed things for me. Yeah, there's been way too many to mention.
So I think an element of those moments, and oftentimes as those things are playing out, we don't realize what a earth-shattering moment this is, right? Exactly. Sometimes it's upon some reflection, but as you looked at these different things play out, or these things happened to you, right? Because people they knew there was something in there. When you started discovering that, did you feel a responsibility to really lead with these things and be like, you know what, there might be something here. And if my goal really is to empower and lift people up, I need to get to it. Did that have anything to do with the book coming about?
So did those experiences inspire me that I better get off the schneid and do something?
That's a more direct way of saying
that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did subconsciously. The most immediate impetus for the book was I finally had the idea of how I could write a book and make it original and not regurgitate stuff. I could interview these people and share my findings. And then throughout my career, I'm sure it's been these little touch points with these people that's helped shape and guide different things.
I think one of the things that's really interesting about these touch points with different people is it goes back to that concept of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And I think we probably both agree that our worlds revolve around our relationships, and our relationships, for the most part, revolve around conversations.
Yep.
So it sounds like some of those conversations may have been hard for people to have
I know people have had to sit me down a bunch to talk about that, but I think sometimes those conversations are an act of love.
They are,
right, or kindness. And what's your view on relationships now that egos have been checked and we're turning into elder men? Let's talk about relationships.
Well, that touches deep in my heart, and the reason for that is I've had some very sweet communications with my children over the last 2 months, especially, but over the last 4 years in particular too. And those conversations don't get enabled without going through the hard and talking about the really uncomfortable stuff.
Okay.
So another experience that comes to mind when you said it's an act of love, and I'll get back to the kids maybe in a minute, but I lived in Germany and Switzerland for 2 years. The trains run on time. Everybody there is on time. And yet I still was late to everything. So not even Switzerland could cure me of being late. So I come back. One of the 22 jobs that I had, I was working for, at the time, my fiance's, I didn't end up marrying her, but my fiance's dad.
Okay.
And I kept showing up late. And Ed looked at me one day and he said, Brandon, I love you. I love working with you. You're a great worker. But if you can't show up on time, I can't use you. And because he said it, I realized I got a problem and I got to do something. It was because of the love I had for Ed and I knew he had for me that it impacted me. That was an act of love for him to say, dude, you're messing up and let's clean this up. Not a big thing in some regards, but in other regards, very big, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, he pressed into that. And me as a natural people pleaser, I'd be like, hey, can you please come on time? And it would be really great if, and I try to sell him on here's the why you should be on time, right? He just looked at me straight in the eye and simply said, I can't use you if you don't. Amy Sanchez was another one. I kept turning in these expense reports that were abysmal. They were messy, the whole thing. And she kept asking me to clean them up. And finally she said, this is the last invoice I'm processing that looks like this. If you can't do it this way, there won't be any more processed. Another act of love. I can't tell you how many times I've thanked her for that because I had to clean up my act. I needed to change some things, right? And so, back to the kids and back to professional relationships. The relationships don't blossom in the flowery, wonderful times. They blossom by going through the hard together and turning toward each other. If you think about your relationship with your significant other, with your wife, or if you have a business partner you really trust, you've probably been through some stuff together. And you have to see how the other party reacts in that time and turn toward each other or mess it up, rupture, but then come back and repair.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. We had a saying in my house around report card day that bad news never gets better with time. Right. So I think part of those conversations are maybe there's an event or something that's drives the immediacy of having to have those. Another thing about conversations I think is unique, and I have 2 girls. I could tell them something and they would be like, yeah, whatever, Dad, I gotcha. And then somebody else, like a minor character on the stage of life is just like, you should really think about it this way. And it's like, Dad, I heard the most amazing thing today. And you're like, what? Yes, make your bed. That'd be amazing. So I think part of those conversations, timing, right? Because I think part of us to receive that hint from the universe is we got to be ready to receive it. Because how many times as a young man have we been like, I don't know what that guy's problem is. I'm that guy's problem. He just made it very clear, but my ego won't allow that to creep in. So no, that's a total blessing. The conversations and the intimacy, it sounds like you've been able to have around those conversations with your children. I think a big part of that too, and I want to see if you agree with this, is actually being present. We're physically in the same space often, but how often are we actually present in a moment? And I just want to get your take on that.
So in training classes, I'll often ask people when we're talking about active listening, and I love that you use the word intimacy, by the way. One of my partners, Trusted Advisor Associates, talks about 4 keys to building trust in a business setting. And they use intimacy as one of those keys. Intentionally so. That's a provocative word in business. It gets people's attention. And they don't use it to get people's attention, but they use it because it's the most appropriate word to describe it. It's that vulnerable. It's that messy. it is that jumping. It's that, that I mentioned, the vulnerability of, hey, I messed up here.
Yeah.
And I got to take ownership of that. So when you are creating a relationship with somebody and leaning into those hard things, you've got to have that recognition, cut the ego out, lean into the tough things. And if you're not present, you can't do those things. So I'll often ask in a training class, how many of you can remember the last time you were talking to somebody and you knew that person was totally present in the conversation? And I give them a moment to think about it. Usually 20% or so of the people raise their hand when I say, who can think of that? And then I ask a couple of them, share with me, when was that? How did you know the person was present? And usually there was eye contact, or they asked great questions, or I just felt it. And then I ask somebody who didn't raise their hand, and I say, well, you didn't think of an experience. Why do you think that is? And they can't really come up with an answer. And I posit and I say, my hypothetical positing is that we don't have these experiences often enough, and that's why we can't remember them. They're rare. For those of you that remembered it right away, though, that also means that it's memorable. It was maybe recent, or it was very memorable. We, especially in our society with these adult pacifiers of our phones,
right?
We don't know how to be present. We don't know how to lean into tough conversations and look somebody in the eye and be intimate with them in that moment and be seen by them. We're so used to putting on the facade so that it looks good on social media, or so that we can get more business because we look really polished. I've just been so blessed by people who are willing to be raw and real and present in the moment with me.
I think two people sharing an actual moment, I mean, it's a gift. And it's even becoming a more high dollar gift because it's so rare these days. I mean, you go to any restaurant and you'll watch mom and dad stare at their phones while little Tommy and Susie stare at their phones, and they pick their head up when they need a bark of food order, and then they go back down to it, right? And it's the time we're in. But I think there's a lot of programming in that, right? These things are designed to cast headlines and catch attention and occupy us from the things that maybe aren't the most important in our lives. And so that's why I'm so intrigued with your vision of empowering people, because I think truly to be empowered and to go out and make a difference. And that's what Re-Inspired is all about, talking with people that are change makers and make a difference and want to make the world, I mean, a better place, even if it's by a millimeter, right?
Yep.
If we can just make it this much better, and then the next day we're going to do it again. And who knows, maybe in a week we'll have somebody doing it with us, and maybe in 3 weeks we'll have 10 people doing it with us. I mean, it starts with those little moments that goes back to what you're talking about, the hard work, doing the things, the activity.
And incremental changes over time, or incremental efforts over time, make monumental differences.
So when you were interviewing these 21 millionaires, was there an element of I'm boring repeatability, boring consistency, the sausage being made, you know what I mean? It wasn't the sports cars and the yachts and Monte Carlo. And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So one thing that I say, I can't even remember if it's in the book or not. I published it more than 10 years ago, so I don't remember every word. But one of the things that I say is, if I could bring back any value, it would be work. Work is ennobling. Work is good for our souls.
Ennobling.
Yeah.
Tell me what's ennobling. Tell me about that.
Yeah. We as human beings are designed to work.
Yeah.
We're not designed to just skate by. We do better when we work. Our self-esteem is better. We create, and we are creators. Our souls are meant to create. And we can't create without work. So I'm not talking about you have to be shoveling ditches, but even if you think about the creative process, there's work involved in that. You have to make a mess. You have to put out a whole bunch of garbage before you create the masterpiece. You don't just create the masterpiece one day. You've got to go through a lot of stuff, a lot of learning to get to that point in time.
There's a great Ansel Adams quote. I guess a reporter came up to him and asked him how all of his photos are so amazing. And he said, it's simple. I don't show anybody the bad ones. right? So that's probably part of the cutting room floor, the mess that we all make. Now, I think there's the ability of making a mess professionally and figuring out what that thing is that we want to bring to life, that Frankenstein, right? I also think through vulnerability and conversations and relationships and being present, sometimes we have to get messy in our personal lives to get that clarity too, right? Sometimes we need to cut through maybe the uncomfortable conversations that are out there.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got to go to people and say, hey, it occurs to me, I may have not done this well. It occurs to me that I may have hurt you when this happened. Hey, I'd like some feedback here. I'm not sure that I'm doing this right or that right. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, as painful as it might be for me. If we don't lean into that uncomfortable and be that vulnerable, we're never going to improve. We're never going to be the best we can be.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you're doing that with an authentic person that cares for you, it gives them the opportunity to show grace. And the world could use a lot more grace. And think about creating an opportunity for someone to be able to display that. I think that's right. Powerful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Back the whole point you've been making through your great questions, true connection happens through being present, being vulnerable, and both sides being open to that.
Do you feel that those themes that we've been talking about today is what has made you the sales trainer, the motivational speaker, the author that you are today? Or more importantly, the father?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you putting that on it, because as Brian Willis, one of the millionaires, pointed out when I interviewed him, I asked him, what's your definition of success? And by the way, almost none of the millionaires would even define it, because they were like, what do I know? And I'm thinking, you've made $1 million. You've been successful in business. You know what success is. But they were all very humble people who were like, I only know what worked for me. Brian, in fact, when I asked what success, he goes, well, don't ask my wife and kids this, but what I would say is success is that I have good relationships with them. So with your question, is that what's made me what I am today? I don't feel like I've accomplished much of anything, right? I've trained in Fortune 500 organizations. I've got some amazing relationships and connections with people who have been in training classes or that I've been able to coach. And those are so valuable to me. And I don't know if it's not false humility, but I really simply think, I don't know that I've done much. I don't know that I've made an impact in this world, but because I've really been focused on my kids, especially in the last 4 years, I would say these concepts are coming home to roost.
Okay.
And they're reaping some of those benefits. I traveled in my early career. I wasn't always connected and there with them, but in the last 4 years, especially in the last 2, I've really tried to live these things with them.
So I know it's oftentimes hard to set these standards for ourselves, right? I also know that it's hard to keep it up sometimes, whether it's a worldwide pandemic none of us saw coming, or a dark spot along our journey or whatever else. Cato and I have talked a lot about, we're not seeing people being burned out. Mm-hmm. We're seeing them depleted. They're just on empty. And going back to people that are wired probably similar to us, that have this element of wanting to please or serve others at a high level, we're constantly pouring out of that pitcher, and we're not conscious of what's being put back in. So we have more to dump out, right? Have you ever found yourself on empty or depleted, or, and if you're willing to share, what did that look like? And how'd you triumph over that?
2019 to 2021, dark spot.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It happened to coincide with COVID. And actually there was some of that was a welcome reprieve, because again, I traveled so much. So it was nice to slow down during COVID and focus on the kids and have a little bit more time. But mine started in 2019. And it was a dark place. Financially, I wasn't where I wanted to be. I started something that I thought was really going to be awesome and change our fortunes financially. And it did not. It was more time, energy, and money into something that didn't pan out. And why am I taking this time away from my kids? Because the whole point is to spend more time with them. Yeah, it was a pretty dark spot. In fact, just one experience of it, I was telling you earlier, I created a chore chart because I just needed help around the house. I couldn't do it anymore. And the kids were contributing a little, but I needed more. So I created this chore chart, and the kids pushed back. I had even asked them, what chores are you willing to do? And how can we divvy this up fairly? But floated that chore chart. They pushed back, and I had nothing to give. I was depleted. I couldn't do it. And one of the things that helped for me was reaching out to a counselor. And you, Cato, and I, and somebody else, we were having that conversation just a few days ago. If we don't honestly and vulnerably share with each other what we're experiencing, we tend to think, I'm alone. There's nobody else who really gets it, or nobody who cares anyway. maybe they get it, but they don't care. They're carrying their own burden.
Right.
They don't have time and energy to help shoulder my burden. And yet, especially as men, as we open up and really honestly share about these things, we realize that, dude, there's a lot more that we have in common. And there's a lot of struggles that we're experiencing. So talking about things can definitely help with those things.
You were sharing that story, and I think you brought him up earlier, your buddy Clay.
Yep.
And Clay sounded like was present enough in a moment to see that you weren't you, or you were a little off.
Yeah.
And he initiated a conversation with you? Or?
Yeah, he said, hey, I've been seeing that something might be different with you. You want to go to lunch? So we did, and he listened to me whine for an hour about the professional trouble that I'm having. And a particular situation that's a difficult situation. It's not one I can solve by leaning in. I did that for a long time, leaned in. And so a quick caveat here is lean in with people who are good partners to lean in with.
Okay.
It may be uncomfortable, but it's still safe to lean in, right? If it's not safe, which, after 10 years, I learned that no, it's not safe to lean into this anymore. And I've got to do some things to protect myself. And so Clay could tell that something was off because I was really consumed with protecting myself with this particular situation. And he said, hey, let's go to lunch. Listen to me whine for an hour. And then gave me that great advice and listen to me whine some more when I told him that, well, I can't do that. And here's why. And was a true friend and it was simple enough, right? And I just gave a talk on Sunday at church, and I labeled it "Act on an Impression." He felt like something was off, and he invited me to lunch.
Okay. A word you used is consumed, right? Yeah. And I think as men, and I would assume as ladies as well, a lot of time the superhero we're trying to be from 7 to 5 or 4 to whatever that is, we almost consume that as this is who I am. This is my being, right? And so when things do get tough from a business standpoint, all of a sudden it's not, hey, business just got tougher. It's I'm failing. Mm-hmm. I'm not enough. Right. I'm not good enough. And then you put that on top of a husband, a wife, a mom, a dad who already on a daily basis feels like they're not allowed to have a bad day.
Yep.
Right. And so I think that leads to that depletion.
Yep.
And I love that someone giving a shit enough to ask a simple question. You don't seem like yourself. You want to grab lunch? Is again one of those moments on that path, that touch point.
Game changer.
It has to do with relationships and conversations.
That's exactly right.
That's amazing, man. What I want to do is I want to take a break real quick. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being vulnerable and having a real conversation with me. I love that. And I think when we come back, Cato's going to maybe you guys dive into some of the lessons learned and some of the data you compiled in writing the amazing 21 questions for 21 millionaires.
Awesome.
All right. We'll be back in a few. Thanks.
Hey, welcome back. And thanks for joining the channel. We're here with Brandon Pipkin, published author, coach, lecturer, just a phenomenal guy. If you saw part 1 where Scott interviewed him, I'm coming in to talk to him a little bit about the book, which, by the way, was absolutely wonderful. I thought it was amazing.
Thank you.
So, it's funny because I've been an entrepreneur since roughly 1983. So what's that, 40 years. And I found myself reading this book, and I'm an avid reader because I think, I heard years ago when I was in a creative writing class in high school, is that a book is a conversation with a friend that you don't even know that you have.
Yes.
And I thought it was great because I wanted to read it, get to know you a little bit and understand it. And I mean, so much of it just resonated with me because one of the main tenets of the book was, hey, you know what? It's not all the things that the self-help books and self-help courses tell you.
That's right.
It's work, and it's called work for a reason. And, you get in and you kind of go through it and find yourself in there. So
that's right.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So work was one of the most surprising things that I found interviewing these millionaires because I had bought into what I had been told creates success. So when I fell into this network marketing deal in the early 2000s, I heard things like, you've got to have a plan, you've got to work your plan, you've got to have discipline. And it wasn't just within that network marketing organization I heard those things. It was all the success books I was reading that purport that this is the way you've got to do it. And each success book claims this is the track. This is what you have to do.
Yep.
And so when I started interviewing these millionaires, and in the third interview, it was so surprising. I talked about that in part one. It was so surprising that Matt Given didn't have goals. He didn't have a business plan. He didn't know what his passion was. I just started following the trail at that point in time, and I became an investigative journalist. I just wanted to know the truth. And so sometimes when I tell people, oh, these 21 millionaires didn't really have written goals, they're like, well, you probably just didn't ask the questions that would have. And I said, look, dude, I'm the one who was set on this is the way that people do it. I'm the one who was interested in those things. I did ask those questions. So work was the first thing that was really the most surprising commonality. And it wasn't clear, I don't think, until I listened to all 21 interviews a couple of times that I realized that that was one of the key themes. No matter what they were doing, no matter where they were in life, they just worked hard. And a lot of times they didn't even know where it would lead.
Well, what's great about that too is, for the last, 25 years or so, maybe 30 years, every month I've taken someone out to lunch who's more successful than me, or someone that I want to know something about. And it was something I was taught to do from a mentor years ago. And so while it wasn't necessarily an interview with these people, I'd usually come with 2 or 3 questions, buy them lunch, and ask them, and the last question I always ask at the end of the lunch is, hey, who do you know that I should know? And let me introduce you to someone as well. But throughout those lunches, what I learned the whole time was they just roll up their sleeves and they get stuff done.
Yep.
And that was one of the things that I absolutely loved, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but who was your favorite millionaire to interview? Not necessarily your favorite millionaire, but your favorite one to interview.
All of them is the right answer to that. But the one who really sticks out was Richard Zuschlag, the last one I interviewed. He was a bang. And I'll say that with also another caveat, which is Heidi Ganahl, who I interviewed somewhat early on. I remember pouring out my concerns to her about how should I structure the book? Should I ask everybody the same 21 questions so that readers can see the consistency? Or do I follow the story where the story goes? And I explained that to her for a minute, and she looked me in the eye with all the compassion in the world, and she said, just follow your heart and it will all work out. It was beautiful. So I really appreciated that. But yeah, Richard Zuschlag ended the conversations with a bang because he's such a dynamic person. He's very charismatic, and his story is pretty darn cool.
So what advice would you have for, let's say, a 21-year-old who wants to become an entrepreneur, or is feeling a little downtrodden? Our markets are not doing so well. The economy is suffering. You've learned a lot over how many years of being a consultant, writing this book. What would you tell young people today?
The first thing I would do is say, I'm not in the business of giving a ton of advice. So even though I'm a consultant, what I learned from the millionaires was I can't give advice. What I can tell you is what's worked for me, what's worked for other people. I have a firm belief that everybody is their own expert, their own success guru. So I can add some help and some flavor and some insight to those kinds of things. And so what I would say is, no matter what you're doing right now, work hard, put your nose to the grindstone, show up, do your very best, no matter what you're doing right now. Even if you hate that thing and it's so far from your passion, do it and do it well, and opportunities will open up. These millionaires had opportunities open up to them because of their hard work. In fact, one of them said, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Absolutely. So you said about being your own guru. Talk more about that.
Yeah. So back to, we've been sold this bill of goods from the personal development industry, who says that you need to listen to this successful person or that successful person, and you need to do things this way or that way. Every one of us has that internal guidance system. Every one of us has our own unique gifts, talents, and abilities that other people aren't really aware of or can't account for. Every one of us has our own unique circumstances and situations. And one of the key things, I'll answer this a bit circuitously maybe. One of the greatest gifts my ex-wife gave me when I told her that these millionaires didn't really operate on goals, she gave me this brilliant insight. She said, maybe it's because they weren't tied in to a certain path. They weren't locked into something. They were open to explore where the opportunities were. Again, that was one of the best gifts she ever gave me, was that insight.
Right.
And I've thought about that so many times. So you are your own success guru because you are the master of your own life, your own situation. Only you know all the unique factors going on. And so to lock yourself into what somebody else says is the right path. First of all, it might be revisionist history. They may not have done that themselves. They're just regurgitating what they think they ought to tell you to do. Secondly, it may not line up completely for what you need to do. Cynthia McKay, the 14th person I interviewed, I think she was 14 or 12, it doesn't matter, but she had talked about how if you listen to other people's advice, it's other people's advice. And it can be helpful, it can be useful to you, but it's not customized just for you.
Great. One of the things I learned as I got a little bit older is I got a lot better judgment. The way I got better judgment was by having some very poor judgment when I was younger and paying the price for that.
Yeah.
So,
I love that statement of how do you make good decisions? Wisdom. Where do you get wisdom? Well,
from making bad choices. Yeah, exactly. And here's what I really loved about your book. And it comes in your title. It's how ordinary people create extraordinary success, because it's not that much extra, but it's just ordinary people that I found myself very much being able to relate to in the book. Because I can read a book from Tony Robbins.
Yep.
I don't relate to him.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world. And by the way, I'm not saying I don't get anything from it, but I found myself reading this book going, I could be friends with this person. Oh, that's a brilliant insight. And they were the minor things. They weren't even the major things, just little things that were said in there that made you shift your focus 1 or 2 degrees as you went. And I think sometimes that's the difference between failure and success, is that 1 to 2 degrees.
I am so glad you picked up on that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I wanted to interview people whose names you probably didn't know is I wanted people to be able to relate and see these people are not that far different from you and I. You can do the very same things that they did. And in fact, every one of them, all 21, would say the very same things. One of them, who created a very successful jewelry store here in Denver, he said, I made all the wrong decisions. We followed the big box retailers to the back side of the mall. We thought they knew what they were doing. They went out of business. So we somehow survived. We made it through. He said there were a lot of people who did the very same things that I did who went out of business. I was just fortunate enough to make it through. So all 21 of them are like, I'm nothing special. It just these things kind of conspired in my favor.
Right. Now you're going to have a lot of people who are watching this who have either read what you've written or know about you. How do you help ordinary people, become more successful in life?
Thanks for the good question. The first thing that I want to do when I work with somebody is help them understand their unique gifts, talents, and abilities, because our school system beats it out of us. It makes automatons out of us. The work system does the same. We funnel people into these systems, and you have to operate this way. My buddy Brandon Hawkins, I love so much what he said. He said something about, we want you to bring yourself to this game, and we will work around that. We want good quality people, and then we'll figure out how you plug into our system here at the work.
It's almost the Google philosophy,
right? Yeah, you hire good people
and unleash them and see what happens.
Figure out, yeah, exactly. So that's the first thing that I do is when I work with people is to help them understand who they are, their natural gifts, talents, and abilities. Meet them where they are, inspire them to greater things, and a lot of times that's through either sales training, sales coaching, leadership development, those kinds of things, one-on-one coaching. But it all comes back to figuring out who you are, where your gifts lie, and how do we help you bless the world with those.
Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit more about the individual gifts here, because, you and I were laughing a little bit off camera. You grew up LDS. I grew up Catholic. I always call myself recovering Catholic because back in the 70s and 80s, when I was growing up, nobody knew what ADD was or ADHD was. And, I just got whacked by a ruler on a regular basis by nuns. And it's funny because I think I was about 30. I was at a school for my girlfriend's kids who were, we've gone through parent teacher conferences. And there was a counselor sitting there with her talking about, well, your son does this and this and this. And I'm listening going, well, I do all those things. And then found out that, this kid's ADHD. And so out of curiosity, I went and, took a test, and I was like off the charts. I probably should have been a poster child.
Yeah.
And, I got 2 18-year-old boys right now that are definitely ADD. I still score higher than them. And it was funny because it was trying to explain to them at an early age that there's nothing wrong with you. Yep. You're not broken.
Right.
Your brain works faster than some people's, and you get bored easily. So you're going to have to pick your career a little bit based on that, because you're not going to be able to sit on an assembly line doing the same thing every day.
Yep.
And so I really like that you brought up that, hey, we want to look at people's individual skills because everybody is different. So tell me more about that. Tell me more about what does that look like to be able to put a team together and utilize those skills?
Well, I'll start by talking about the 13th person I interviewed, Bill Beagle. As I was talking to Bill, he at one point stopped while he was answering a question. He goes, look, I know I'm not answering your question. I've got ADHD. And I know I don't go A to B when I'm answering a question, and I'm not answering your question. I get that. And then he started telling me a story about how he used to be ashamed of that, his ADHD. And then he heard an interview with the founder of JetBlue Airlines, David Neeleman.
Yep.
And David's got ADHD, apparently, based on what Bill said. And David said, it's been one of the keys to my success. And Bill and I don't think we dove in too much as to how it had been the key to his success. But if you think about a business owner, ADHD, what are you able to do? You're able to work on a number of different things all at once, competing priorities.
100% agree.
Right? You're able to race over here, get something done over there, race over. And it's what created success for him. And Bill said, from the time I heard that interview, I've no longer been ashamed of it. And now I've leveraged it to be part of my success. One of the things that I see in American business that we often miss is we hire people for their gifts, talents, and abilities, their skills, and then we expect them all to operate in the very same way.
Thank you for saying that. That is brilliant. And by the way, I think that diminishes their culture because people are inauthentic at work. Right. And I think that causes a lot of stress. I think that's a brilliant, brilliant statement.
Yeah. What is diversity? It is each individual bringing what they have to the party, and each of us appreciating the strengths that brings and the uniqueness that it brings. One of the key or one of the things that I talk about in training classes are my friends John and Tiff. John is as analytical as the day is long. If you look at DISC or Social Styles or anything like that, he's the highly analytical type person. He's married to Tiff. Tiff is as expressive as you can get. Right? These two are polar opposites. And it surprised me to learn that John was so analytical because I knew Tiff first through church. And I said something like, hey, we should go dancing sometime. You grab John, I'll grab a date, and we should go dancing. This will be tons of fun. And she's like, oh, my husband, John. And I couldn't fathom what she was talking about. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, oh, no, he is not the dancing type. And I was confused because I thought anybody who's married to you, Tiff, has to be firecracker because that's who you are. So I met John and I learned the key to their success. We'll be driving down the road and I'll say, hey, Tiff, how was that concert on Thursday? She'll go, oh my gosh, it was so much fun. There were 200 people there and we were jamming. And John will say, honey, it was 156. Right? Now, John's not trying to be the know-it-all. He's not trying to be rude. He honestly, in his mind, 156 and 200, those are two different numbers.
Yep.
Right? Now, John works in power distribution. He works for a power company, managing their networks. Do I want him to know the difference between 156 and 200?
100%.
100% I do, right? Now, in the context of this, is it important? No. So Tiff has a choice to make. She can go, John, stop interrupting the story. That's not the important part. Or she can do what I've seen her do many, many times. She looks over, she pats his hand, looks at him with that smile that I've come to see many times. And she goes, so anyway, these 200 people and I, it was so, right? She gives him room to be who he is.
Right.
She doesn't try to change him. It's so beautiful, the two of them together. They genuinely care for each other and love each other and aren't trying to change each other. In American business, if we could not try to change each other as much and could recognize each other's strengths and divvy out work according to those strengths, we would be 100 times more effective.
Well, and you bring up a huge point here because, boy, I hope my wife watches this because I'm much more like John. I teach economics and she calls me the useless trivia guy because I seem to know a little bit about everything because I read so much. But equality doesn't necessarily mean the same. And I think we've broken that down in our society to where everybody thinks, oh, well, equality means, everything is exactly the same. It's like, no, equality means that we recognize the differences in each other and we utilize them to help each other, not that necessarily help ourselves in a selfish way, but more just so that we can, as a group, create more, because at the end of the day, the group is smarter and better than the individual.
I wish I could remember the phrase. I think Robert Hales is the person I heard it from. Thee lift me and I lift thee, and together we ascend together.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
I haven't heard that
together,
one.
or we ascend together, whatever. But yeah, so if you think about somebody with ADHD, maybe I can do something to make life a little easier for them. Maybe they can do something to make life a little easier for me, where I have either a special strength or need a little additional help. And if we help each other in those ways,
Absolutely.
we can get so much more done.
Now imagine how great the world would be if everybody took that approach.
Well, so I was in a training class and I was telling stories about John and Tiff. And I told one of the stories in the other way around, where Tiff went off one day. And she said, she never told me what she said, but she said, I said some really mean things to John that day. And I came back to him later in the day and I said, John, will you please forgive me? I don't mean those things. I'm so sorry. It was uncalled for. John's response was, I forgave you the moment it came out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And he meant it.
Yeah.
So not only does he give Tiff room to be who she is, he recognizes she's in his zone. She doesn't mean this. And he's genuinely got a good heart. And I shared that story and a lady in the audience said, find me a John. So when you say, imagine how much better the world would be, right? People recognize that. At the end of the day, everybody just wants to feel valued. They want to feel seen. They
Absolutely.
want to feel understood. And if we can give that gift to everybody, to other people, if we can each do that for each other, the world would be an amazing place.
So you wrote this incredible book, 21 Questions for 21 Millionaires. You know, you have these amazing insights. How would someone get a hold of you if they want to, so that they can have a deeper conversation with you, whether it's to help their company, come out and speak? What would they need to do?
BrandonPipkin.com, BrandonPipkin.com. That's the best place to get a hold of me.
Okay. And where can they get the book? Because I'll tell you guys right now, the book is well worth your money. So, I mean, it was books worth hundreds of dollars, in my opinion.
Appreciate that. Amazon.
Okay.
Yep. Amazon.
So you can just go pick it up there. What else do you want people to know right now?
That they do indeed have a unique gift, talent, and ability that I want them to share with the world, and that the world needs to be shared. I am deficit of people around me who aren't tapped into that gift. I could be blessed. The world could be blessed with that gift. And you've been given that gift for a reason. The rest of us need it. And you'll bless your own life as you get in touch with it. And then you exercise that, take action.
That is absolutely awesome. Brother, it has been awesome to get to know you. I appreciate it. Hey, for those of you, if you like this, do us a favor, smash that like button. It does help the algorithm. It helps it get out to more people, and make sure you hit that bell and subscribe as well, so that we can send you more content. We're going to have more coming week after week for you, and you get great people like this where you get to spend time with them rather than wasting your time on the boob tube. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you. And cut.